Over the next 18 months, me and Mike are doing a series of 3 challenges. March, we're running a marathon on a frozen lake in Norway. We're going to be summiting the Matterhorn. We're going to be rowing from Australia to Tanzania in an open class rowboat. We've never rowed anything before, let alone an entire ocean. I would rather be someone that was upset and had pursued a big goal than someone that just didn't. It wouldn't be uncommon for a wave to knock you off your seat and off the boat. They had to stay arm in arm in the sea until the nearest boat came to get them, which took 18 hours.
Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast. In this week's episode, I sit down with Jake Mattock, who set up the Adventure Antidote. And as part of the Adventure Antidote, what he and his friend Mike are going to be doing is they're going to run a marathon on a frozen lake. They're going to be climbing the Matterhorn, and they're going to be rowing across an ocean. Now, they've never done anything like this before. This is brand new for Jake. So in this episode, we're going to talk about why he set these challenges, what obstacles he's going to face, and the risks of ocean rowing. Now, this is going to be quite an undertaking. He's literally gone from running a half marathon, like that's the most adventurous activity he's done so far, to doing all of these 3 challenges in the space of 18 months. So this is definitely a journey you want to follow along with. Now, bringing it across to Adventure Athletes, again, we've got our Christmas offers. So this is your last chance to grab these offers. We've got 50% off our rock climbing courses. We've got 100% off any of our training plans. And you've got your first month free of bespoke training. You can enjoy any of these offers. You can mix and match them, use as much as you like. But again, this is your last chance to use it. The deadline is going to be the 1st of January. So if you want to get these exclusive offers, then just DM us on Instagram, message us on Spotify or YouTube, and yeah, we'll give you the code and you can sign up. But for now, enjoy the podcast. When you're training, what food do you think about eating the most?
Oh my god, what, when I'm actually physically training?
Yeah.
I don't think I think about food at all when I'm training, you know. It's not something that's on my mind. Honestly, I think I probably think more about being thirsty and wanting water, or I do have a thing for the blue Powerades. You know, I think they're a top quality drink, tastes great. But food-wise, like, if I'm training, the thought of eating something it makes me feel like I'm going to be sick, you know, especially if I'm having a good session. So that's not on my mind. Beforehand, I would definitely be thinking about having some chocolate. A bit of something to give me a kick before the session.
Yeah.
Afterwards, mate, it really depends on the time of year, what I've been doing, you know. If it's winter like it is now, and we've just gone out and been climbing or something, then, you know, fish and chips and curry sauce is perfect. If it's the summer, I might be more inclined to go for something fruity, you know.
Yeah. His answer, because he wanted me to tell you his answer as well.
Okay.
He always thinks about toasted bagels with just a bit too much butter on. So
I don't think there's such a thing as too much butter.
Yeah, that was his answer. So he was very set on that. Like,
really?
when he's out running, that's his main thing. Is he's a runner. So when he's out running, he just wants a toasted bagel with a little bit too much butter.
Just thinking about that bagel all day.
So getting into the thick of it then, what's been on your mind recently that you want to share with the listeners? Is there anything in particular?
Wow, there is probably a lot. Obviously it's related to the things that I'm working on at the moment. The thing that's been on my mind is that I don't think I've ever truly set my sights on a goal that I thought was unachievable. And the reason I think it's a good thing to do that, and the reason I'm already thinking it's a good thing to do that, I think it comes down to that saying, was it, you know, shoot for the moon and you'll end up amongst the stars if you miss. And, you know, I've set a target for myself which is fucking huge, and sometimes it does scare me with how big it is, and I think, oh, what am I going to do if I don't achieve it? But there's no way that you can reverse engineer the goal. And, you know, typically if you do set a goal that is achievable, there's a way you can look at, okay, well, to achieve that in this time frame, the things I need to do are this, 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 and this, and you can be confident that you'll get there. In the space that I am, where there isn't really a path to the finish, you're forced to think creatively, to do things that you wouldn't usually do, to spend the time speaking with people, you know, reading things, listening to things that, you know, are outside of your usual kind of sphere of knowledge or things that you're into, right? And in the few weeks since I've launched my campaign, the Adventure Antidote that we'll talk about, I've met so many people in such a short period of time, made some really great connections, learned lots of new things, and done things even today that I've never done before. And I would never have done them had I not set a goal that was so big that I thought was unachievable, or that there was a way to do it without having to reach outside of myself and my own contacts and just the things that I know. So I think that's been something that's interesting, and I probably, you know, 3-4 months ago would have considered myself someone who has high ambitions, challenges themselves, but sitting in the place I am now, I'm kind of like, well, I don't think I was at all.
Yeah. So where has this all come from? Like, what's made you suddenly switch from not doing anything in this realm to like setting 3 pretty big goals, increasing in difficulty over the next, 18 months?
18 months, yeah. So for context, I'm one of a team of 2. My friend Mike is he's a parachute jump instructor in the RAF, and he is the capable, fit guy that has the adrenaline job. He jumps out of planes for a living, right? He and my friends that do that are the coolest people, and I want to be more like them. So over the next 18 months, me and Mike are doing a series of 3 challenges. In March, we're running a marathon on a frozen lake in Norway, which is a good starter for us. Neither of us have ever run a marathon before. We both keep reasonably fit. We're sure we'd be able to do it. It's a case of figuring out, well, what kind of time can we do it in? They say that you should add around 20-25% to your normal marathon time because of the conditions, and you've got to wear spikes and stuff because it is proper ice, so it's slippery. But, you know, we don't have a marathon time, so the joke's on them. You can't add 20% to 0. Then in September, we're going to be summiting the Matterhorn, something that we spent tons of time in lockdown on the phone, just talking about, oh, when we're out of lockdown, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this mountain. The time finally came that we were like, let's go and do the Toblerone mountain that we talked about. Let's carry that chocolate to the top and eat it when we're up there. And then the third one, which is by far the biggest, is we're going to be rowing from Australia to Tanzania in an open class rowboat from Rannoch Adventure. And by doing that, we'll be the first pair to complete that ocean row, which will mean we'll set a world record in doing it. Remind me what the question was that you asked?
So, like, where's it all come from? What's made you make that switch to not having done an adventure athlete-esque task to breaking a world record?
Yeah, cool. So I think it's better, almost like to go way back to the start, because a couple of people have asked me some things since, saying, you know, what's made you want to do that, and they say, maybe you're that type of person, right? And when I was a kid in primary school, am I that type of competitive person that just wants to go and challenge and do things? When I was like a kid, we had our final sports day before going to the bigger school, and I remember in the 100-meter race, I can't remember if I was winning, but I was doing reasonably well. But my best friend wasn't winning, so I waited for him so we could cross the finish line together. And I think it's just a good short story of like where my mind was as a kid, right? My brother was a killer. He wanted to win stuff all the time, but I just wanted to be there with my friend. So I didn't find that in me until a lot later in life. I went to secondary school out in the Cotswolds, and I went to that school having basically no friends because all of my friends from my hometown went to the school in my hometown, and I went to one a bit further away. So it meant that I got to like meet a bunch of new people. Try to make new friends in that situation is always difficult, right? Because kids are mean, and ultimately it was good fun. One of my friends, after a couple of years, wanted to try out going to a boxing club, and he asked me to go with him. I was like, yeah, sure, man, I'll go there with you, no problem. We walk into the club, and proper spit and sawdust little club out in Carterton, Windrush Valley ABC. I'd not accidentally, I'd on purpose, but I didn't realise the implications. I'd just worn a pink t-shirt that day to an old school like boxing club, and oh my god, did the coaches let me know about it? They were like, I probably couldn't say the things that they were saying now without without getting hate for it or being cancelled, but they were calling me all sorts of kind of like sexist names and just teasing me for it. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but if I was the type of person, it could have been a pretty nasty experience, and I could have really not wanted to go back. And actually, when we left the gym that day, my friend was like, thanks for coming, I've got it from here, like, you don't need to come again, no worries. I was like, no, I'm coming back next week. I come back, and the following week I had pink socks on, pink shorts, pink t-shirt, pink wraps, pink gum shield, and I was like, so what, I'm pink. And for the next 4 years that I boxed for that club, the coaches called me Pinky. Everyone in that club knows me as Pinky, and even to the point that my dad had to call the coaches for something a few years later. He said, I'm Jake's dad. And my coach, who I've had like a father-son loving relationship with, was like, who's Jake? Because he just knows me as Pinky. But like that experience got me way out of my shell and helped me to find the fire in my stomach where I was like, I wanted to win things. I wanted to box. I wanted to be better. And boxing or any type of fighting sport is pretty raw in terms of like, there's nowhere else to go. When somebody beats you in a fighting sense, they can't resort to physical violence to beat you. You just won on the most fundamental level, and there's a good achievement in it. It's a good lesson to learn when you've lost. It's a good respect for your opponents. And yeah, ultimately, one of the biggest things I had to overcome in that was like my first fight. And I was sick to the stomach like months before actually getting in the ring, just knowing that it was going to happen. I can remember being on the bus to Oxford, going to see my girlfriend at the time. We'd see each other once a week on a Sunday. But that bus journey was an hour from where I lived to Oxford. And I would sit there thinking about this fight that was like 3 months away. My stomach would be turning, and I actually felt the nerves of getting in the ring before, and I was just so petrified of it, but I did it. Time moves on, and I start going into kind of my professional career, I guess. And initially I moved to London as a personal trainer. Shortly after, after getting sick of having no money, my clients were doing pretty well, and one of them offered me a job in sales, and one thing led to another. I then ended up in a career in sales. What happens when you're in sales is they like that competitiveness. And it does help you, right? Because you want to be the person next to you. You want to be the top in your team, in your company, whatever. But all of your goals, without you realizing, they slowly gear towards financial goals rather than your own kind of personal goals. As you go from one job into the next, some questions will come up and they'll be kind of consistent. And one of the things that I've been asked before is like, well, tell us something that you're proud of achieving. And I would always go back to that boxing. I tell them that story of like, I walked in there, they ripped the shit out of me. I came back with character the next week, like twice as strong, and then I did something I never thought I'd do, which was get in the boxing ring, and I did it time after time after time after that. I was really proud of myself for doing that. That was like more than a decade ago now, like 12 years ago. And I was like, I can't still be telling that story. It's a good story, and it means a lot to me, but if in 10 years, the proudest thing I've done was when I was a teenager, I wasted my 20s. I've wasted a ton of time. And I can't just continue with that in the back pocket as like the thing that I did. You know what I mean? I must be able to achieve something that I'm more proud of than that. And I don't want it to be material or financial. I'm still a human being, right? I still want money. I still want to buy things, right? It's all kind of natural, right? We want to acquire things. But I want to have something for myself that isn't to do with that. In one of the jobs that I was at, somebody actually told me about the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, which is a row from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean, and tons of people enter this race every year. The issue was that the entry fee for the race is like £22,500. So immediately I'm just like, well, I'm not entering that race anytime soon. I was living in London. I'd actually got quite a bit of debt as well. I probably had debt to about the same tune. So the entry for me would have been about 40,000. I was thinking, fuck, I'm never doing that. Lockdown happened, and I actually managed to fortunately get myself out of debt because I was in a situation where I was locked in my house and I couldn't spend any money and I could pay it off, which was quite a godsend for me, to be fair. There was some silver linings to it for sure. And then when you come out the other side, I've now been in that place where I'm going, okay, well, I don't have this big weight on my back of these debts holding me down. What do I really want to do? And I was living in London at the time. I now live in Wales, in Bridgend, and I love getting in the sea, surfing. I love getting out, climbing. I love hiking. I love anything outdoors. I suck at them all. But that's the stuff that I want to do, right? And naturally, throughout the week, I run, I train in the gym. I've always kept that up. But again, like, I haven't pursued a challenge in that area. I've always kept fit. I haven't ever entered a race. In my mind, I'm always like, yeah, I do that any day. But it's just like, well, why don't you then? Why don't you go and do the thing that you say you could do and get that achievement in the box? Because that's what you're looking for, right? Is have this empty feeling where I've achieved something a long time ago and I'm just leaning on that as like, oh, this is my achievement for life. I still want to achieve more things. So I think that's the story of where it comes from. And I had an opportunity to speak to somebody who rode in the race. Actually, I spoke to a couple of people because I've kept on banging on that I want to do this row. Eventually, you come across somebody that knows someone that's done it, right? And they put me in touch. I managed to have a couple of conversations. Someone who did it on their own, which I think is ballsy. To get in a boat and row an ocean on your own is double hard. And I spoke to a couple of lads who also thought about entering the race, but they did the same row, but with no support, and they did it without entering. And then from one thing to the next, you end up doing a bit of research. I found out that actually ocean rowing has been around for quite a long time. The first ocean row, a couple of lads went from New York to the UK in the late 1890s in a wooden rowing boat, and they did that. From then there were like a dozen more ocean rows till like the 1980s, where the modern ocean rowing became a sport. And they in like the record books, there's like a kind of a divide there, because that's the last point that they go from using no modern equipment to today's technology. With satellite navigation, satellite phones, good solar panels on the boat, kit, safety kit. The boats are much more aerodynamic and buoyant and prepared for the weather. We can read the weather better. There's tons of different things that support you now compared to what those guys were doing back then. But just like going through that information, I was like, oh shit, this is really possible. Like if they were doing that then, I can definitely do it now, and I don't necessarily need to enter the race. And it like each just like little building block builds on to like, oh my god, I could do this. Oh my god, I could do this. Let me just find out the next piece of information. Okay, so I'd speak to the people who build the boats. I'll find out how much a boat costs. Okay, cool. Well, what ocean would we do? Well, if we do this one, we'd be setting a world record by doing it. Is there a reason that people haven't done this ocean compared to like another one? Is there something inherently fundamentally difficult about this that means we shouldn't try on our first go? Turns out there's not. A lot of people have rowed across the Indian Ocean, but they have rowed from Australia to Mauritius. There's obviously like a little island off the side of mainland Africa. And if you add on a little bit more, you can get to mainland Africa. And when I say a little bit, it's like 1,000 or so kilometres.
So, just a tad.
Yeah, so it might be a few days. But if you add that part on, then we'll set a world record by doing it. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my god, I'm 100% doing that. So okay, how do we make this real then? What do we need? We need to get, let's say, a minimum of 200 hours rowing time on the ocean. I'm sure we'll get a lot more than that. We both want to achieve more than that so that we feel safe when we're actually out at sea. We need to get our survival at sea course done. We also need to figure out who's going to give us ground support. We need to learn how to read the weathers, the winds. We need to figure out the travel, time of year that we're going to do it. But piece by piece, these things can be planned and figured out. And it comes to a point where, okay, we've got a plan for when we can row this ocean, and we both want to do it. We've also, in our own personal lives, we've signed up to run this marathon on a frozen lake in Norway, and we're signed up to do the Matterhorn. And we start to think, well, we've almost got like a campaign of the 3 things that we can do here. All the dominoes are in place, and it becomes a thing of just having the balls to say we're going to do this and sort of announce it and then go and chase actually doing it, because we've done the planning and the thinking and the talking. Now it's a case of going out there and actually executing on it. So I think that was a big leap to take, right? Are we going to announce to the world that we're going to do this ridiculous thing? What are they going to say? Our parents weren't less pleased about it. But yeah, I think that kind of hopefully answers your question as to where it comes from.
How has the response been since announcing it?
Again, it probably depends who you ask, because understandably, parents and family members, I don't want to say haven't been supportive, because that's not the right thing, but they've been kind of upset, nervous about it, right? Because they care about us. They don't want us to do something stupid, because it sounds huge, and we've never rowed anything before, let alone an entire ocean. But what we're trying to do is obviously assure them that although we haven't, people do this every year. It is achievable. Of course, there are dangers, right? If you go rock climbing, there are dangers, but you minimize them by having the right safety gear, taking the right precautions, and it's still not 100% safe, because things can fail, but it's a hell of a lot safer than people can sometimes make it out to be. If you see someone up on a wall somewhere, it can be quite daunting to look at it and go, oh my God, they're 40 foot up above the ground. But really, like, there's not that much danger upon them at that point in time. And so, yeah, from the family perspective, it's been a little bit difficult because we just want to make sure that people don't think we're out there to kill ourselves, because that's not the plan, right? We do want to come back successful, and we want to set that record. From a lot of people, there's been, I suppose, like two groups. There's been almost like a kind of half disbelief, amazement group, like, are you really? Wow, why? Oh my God, like, even if I had the opportunity to do that, like, I wouldn't do it. It doesn't sound fun. It sounds terrible. Like 70 odd days at sea. Who wants to put themselves through it for what? And then there are a group of people that are like amazed in a like, that's incredible, and want to know more about it. Some people have even said like, I'm kind of a little bit jealous that you're doing it. Like, I want to do something like that myself. And again, like that sort of comes into the ethos of the campaign, right? Is I fundamentally have spent a load of time in the city chasing financial goals, and I know that if I continue to chase financial goals and material goals, I won't get fulfillment from it. Even though that money is a important part of living in the real modern world today, you can't ignore it, and it's okay to have financial goals. I think if anything, it's healthy, because you need a certain amount of that to live the life that you want to live. But if that then is your only goal, I think you'll be left unfulfilled. And what I want to do is use this to help spread that message to people that you should go and seek an adventure of your own. Like, number one, because people are struggling with mental and physical health. I don't think anyone needs me to give any statistics on it. We see it. You see it everywhere. And I think the most fundamental way to get away from it is not look for a solution in your screen, or buy something from Amazon to fix it, or buy an app, or whatever it is. And it is just to get outside. I think it helps obviously clear your mind, because you're focusing on the task at hand, right? Like I'm not thinking of what food I want to eat, because I'm thinking about putting one foot in front of the other, and inevitably it improves your physical health, right? If you're sitting around all day versus if you even do something simple like going for a hike, that will do you a world of good. And I think it gets you closer to the real world. There's tons and tons of anxiety right now about how we treat the environment, and it is important that we take care of the world that we live in. But if you come to Wales and you go hiking in the Brecon Beacons for 4 hours, have no phone signal, I think you become very quickly reassured that we haven't screwed the world up yet. There's still tons of it that is green and blue and beautiful, and it's not that far away from you. You don't have to fly to Peru to do the Machu Picchu trail to feel close to nature. Like, nature's pretty much on your front door. Not if you live in central London, but it might be a few hours.
Yeah.
But you can find it.
With the row, how does survival work? You say you're going to be at sea or in the ocean for 70 odd days. Like, how's it going to work with food, sleeping, shelter, all of that?
Yeah, good question. So I'll start with sleep. One of us will be pretty much rowing at all times. So typically when people go in a pair, you do one on, one off for 2 hours each until you get there. So we have an indoor cabin where one of us will be sleeping and the other one will be rowing on deck. We do have 2 seats for us both to row. We might spend some time depending on like if the weather needs it. And that can mean if there's good weather and good winds behind us and we want to ride that, maybe we both want to get on the deck and row and get as much out of it as possible. And also, if there's bad weather, there becomes a decision to make. How bad is it? Because past a certain point, you want to swallow your pride and not try to row through it because it gets dangerous. That's when you retire to the cabin and just wait it out. Or it becomes a case of it's not dangerous, but we don't want to lose ground. Let's both get out there and try and power through this together. So in terms of how are we going to sleep, I think it's going to be badly. I think we're going to be quite sleep deprived by the end of it. Food-wise, we pretty much have to prepare, the standard like ration packs if you were going to expedition, right? We're going to have to take 3,000-4,000 pounds worth of food, but it will all be dry food that can last a long time, right? We can take things like sweets and chocolate because they don't really expire whilst you're out there, but things like fruit obviously would spoil, so you can't eat or take any fruit with you. So I know a lot of people that have gone on like an ocean row are really dying for like their first bite of an apple, an orange, a banana or something when they get back to land. In terms of safety equipment, there are a whole bunch of things, and this is what I've learned from speaking with people, bearing in mind that at some point next year we've got to do the survival course and things like that, so I'm kind of talking out my arse at the moment. But, we will have satellite navigation, and we'll have multiple satellite phones, and we'll likely be linked up to something like Starlink as well, so we have internet connection. And what that means is like daily we'll be doing checks with people on land for, can they track where we are, are we okay, what are the conditions, what are they reading weather-wise, what are we reading, what are we expecting. So we should have a pretty good gauge most of the time as to whether we're expecting bad weather or not, and also the kind of the level of bad weather as well. The boats are built to cope with a ton of swell, and the lads that I've spoken to have easily ended up on 30-40 foot swells, right? And others have ended up in storms that have lasted 2 or 3 days, right, where you have to retire to the cabin the whole time and you're getting rolled. I think that the boats would have to be broken into a million pieces for the boat to sink. If the boat does do that, we will have safe life rafts on the boat as well, and each one of those will be prepared with kit to help us survive whilst we're on the raft, like another phone, like another battery, like all these different things that we can use to get people to find us once we're out of the trouble. I don't think that's the major worry. I think the biggest worries, as with most kind of adventure sports, are the simple things. That's where the kind of the unexpected and biggest risks are. What I mean by that is waves all the time are going to be hitting the boat, and it's an open class boat, so that means that there's no sides to it. It helps us have speed, but it means we have less shelter from the elements. So it wouldn't be uncommon for a wave to knock you off your seat and off the boat. If that happens, that would be very bad if you're not linked by a lanyard to the boat. If that happens at night and you're not linked on, you're done for. Like, you're not finding the boat again, you're not catching up with it. So as we are sleep deprived, aching and trying to continue rowing, it's keeping strict to the protocols of the second you come out of your cabin, you clip yourself on with the carabiner to the lanyard. The second you get back in, you leave your lanyard there, right? And it's being strict with knowing what are our limits before we leave in terms of wind speed, how many knots are we going to say to ourselves now if it gets to that point, we go into the cabin. Even if we're out there and we say, if it gets past 14 knots, we'll go into the cabin. It gets to 15 and we're thinking, oh yeah, it's 1 knot. What's the difference? We feel fine. We need to be strict because we probably won't be thinking straight when we're out there. So it's those kinds of small things that are going to be the important ones that preserve our life and keep us safe when we're out there. It's those protocols that I want to make sure that I'm clipped on so that when Mike wakes up for his turn on the row, I'm there to swap over with, not coming out to an empty deck and wondering where I've gone 2 hours ago because you never find it. So those are so far what I've learned. Of course, a certain amount of the safety is going to be knowledge of the boat and knowledge of the oceans, right? And that's why there's a minimum requirement for us to row 200 hours on the sea, and we will sleep on the sea as well, right? We need to know where our equipment is. We need to know how it works. To a certain degree, I'm sure we need to know how to fix things if they go wrong, right? And we then also have a course that we need to do on navigation at sea and survival at sea. So I think if we do those things right, we're prepared and we stick to the right protocols, you're pretty safe out there.
Yeah. And then with the challenge, there's always things that pop up, no matter what the challenge is, whether it's physical, mental, that you don't think about beforehand. Like with me, with the podcast, I didn't think it would be this hard to book guests on, for example, and like how many people I have to message and reach out to. Like that was something I never expected to happen when I signed up for it. What is one of those unexpected things that you've come across that you didn't think would happen before signing up?
Well, already in terms of like since we've launched the campaign.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. I suppose it is how hard it is to fundraise. That's the difficult thing right now. Is the first challenge is in March, and I'm really excited for that challenge. That one doesn't scare me. It sounds like good fun. A marathon on a frozen lake is going to be a cool weekend away. The one after that is in 12 months' time. So I've got a lot of time before I get to that point. And there are some things about climbing the Matterhorn that I'm kind of nervous about, right? Loose rock is an issue in the Matterhorn, especially depending on temperature. If it was too hot like it was this year, your bid will fail to get to the top of the Matterhorn because it's too risky. The rocks are too loose. And obviously the altitude means that there's considerably less oxygen up there. I'm an asthmatic, and you do get those questions in your head like, oh, what happens if I get 80% of the way up and I start thinking, oh my God, I can't breathe. Get nervous for those things, but I'm not there yet. And so the thing that we have to do now is we have to fundraise to buy the boat. That's the most expensive thing, and this is the biggest barrier to entry. This is what stops more people ocean rowing, right? It's not a small investment. We need to raise to the tune of £100,000 to get on the water. And the thing that I didn't expect, so the unexpected challenge, is how hard it is to get money out of people. And I was talking to my brother about it, and he put it into a little bit of context for me, because he was like, well, you should have expected that really, because has anyone ever owed you money? Like they actually owed you money and it's difficult to get out of them. Well, now you're in a position where they don't owe you anything and you're trying to get money out of them. I was like, fair enough.
That is a good perspective right there.
Yeah, he's got wisdom.
So, what do you aim to achieve by doing this? Like, what do you get out of doing this challenge? Where does it go?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's, it comes down to that, the story earlier on. I think I'm capable of doing it, and I want to prove to myself that I can. I don't think I was put on this planet to pursue financial goals and to acquire things, although I definitely still want some of them, right? And if I can have them, then I would really enjoy it. But when I am in a rocking chair and I'm looking back on what I've done in my life, I want to be able to say that I've done or tried really hard at some things that were scary, that really put me on the edge of my own limits. So doing these challenges, what I believe will get me there. And if I complete the challenge, I'll be ecstatic and I'll be proud of myself. If I don't complete the challenge, I'm sure I'll be very upset, but I would rather be someone that was upset and had pursued a big goal than someone that just didn't at all.
What happens if you get tired in the row and like to the point where you don't think you can complete it? Like, what's the safety net? Is there a safety net, or is it once you're out there, it's do or die?
Yeah, well, I like to think that that's not an option. I suppose, like, also just to put a little note on how I see things, I find it very difficult to experience like the fear of being out there that until I am there, and so I know that, for example, I'm not the type of person that will get to the start line and then be like, I can't do this. It's actually dawned on me how big of a challenge this is and it's scary. I'll get that daunting feeling when I'm nowhere near land and there's some big waves and I'm starting to doubt myself and I'm going, oh shit. That's when that would happen to me. So I have no doubt that I'll get into the thick of it. If we do end up in a situation that we really don't think we can continue, and like there's multiple reasons, right? It might be that we don't have the energy. It might be that one of us gets injured or gets sick. I know that, some people that I've spoken to, you spend a lot of time wet. Naturally, you're in the middle of the ocean, and there can be quite a lot of swell hitting you quite regularly. And even if you're wearing the foul weather clothing, you're drenched all the time. You can get fungal infections from that alone. So it can be a really uncomfortable experience. And if it does get too much, then of course you're going to need to call for help. The interesting thing about calling for help is when you're in the middle of the ocean, help might not be that close. I heard a story of 4 lads who actually ended up in their lifeboat. What happened was their boat capsized, and this was in the Atlantic Ocean. It didn't correct itself, so they couldn't get it back the right way round. So they had to get the life raft out, and it was horrible conditions. What one of them did was use the knife to break open the life raft and pierced the boat itself. And of course, like, saying it out loud, it sounds like a really stupid thing to do. But when you're in this situation, I can imagine your only priority is getting that thing off the boat and getting it open as quickly as possible because you're in a dangerous situation. So you can understand how someone does that quickly, thinking that it's going to be fine. The lifeboat then was screwed, and they had to stay arm in arm in the sea until the nearest boat came to get them, which took 18 hours. And that was an emergency. So you might not be close to help. It might be a long, long way away. If we end up in a situation where we can't continue from, lack of energy or an injury or something like that, I don't think that's the end of the world. It'd be very upsetting and probably frustrating, but ultimately, if we need to wait it out on the boat for 24, 36 hours, I'm sure we'd be capable of doing that. I think that the issue is if something does go horribly wrong and we need help quite quickly in bad conditions, unfortunately, I don't think the help's going to be there.
Yeah. So what does your training look like with these challenges?
So right now, the first thing on our plate is the marathon. The furthest I've done before is a half. And and you know, to be quite honest, as someone that does train pretty regularly, like I probably do 10, 12K once, twice a week, depending on the week. So to double that wasn't very difficult for me. That marathon is now like 17 weeks away. So we have started our marathon training, although it's at a low level. We'll ramp that up pretty drastically after Christmas. You know, I mean, I think we want to enjoy ourselves for the next few weeks, but like, you know, keep the wheels running. I'd imagine we'll be on the road 2 or 3 times a week still. But I can't imagine me going past, I suppose, maybe 15, 16K before Christmas. After Christmas, it still gives us a good like 14 weeks, maybe 13 weeks till the event. So then we'll really ramp up our marathon training. After that, we then end up in our training for the Matterhorn, which again, I think that we have the baseline fitness for. What we will be doing is going out to Snowdonia to practice, you know, using crampons and some of the kit that we're going to have to use out there, because you don't want to get up on a vertical peak of a mountain and find out you don't know how to use a crampon, or you feel very uncomfortable doing it, right? It's going to ruin the time for everyone else as well. So I think the major thing there is to make sure that we are comfortable with the kit. At the same time as training for the Matterhorn, our focus will be on getting the time on the water for the row. Like next summer, we need to do our course for our survival at sea and our navigation at sea, but then we just need to see how many weekends or weekdays we can get where we can spend 24, 36, 48 hours rowing and sleeping in the boat, putting anchor, trying to navigate our way around the coast, understanding the winds and the tides and the swell and all these different things. The more natural we can get at that, the better it will be for us. From what I've understood and it might sound kind of counterintuitive, but from what I've understood from people who've actually rowed the ocean, is they said the training you do on like a rowing machine isn't really that transferable, right? It's good to have a bit of muscle memory in the motions, but because it's such a long duration, being generally fit and keeping supple, so making sure that we stretch a lot before we go, is going to be the primary thing. But nothing can prepare you like actually rowing on the ocean. So the thing that we have to prioritize above everything is actually just getting on the sea.
Yeah.
Like one of the lads said that with the year that he did the row, he was in the race, and he's a fit guy, trained super hard for it. Said that someone that was sort of like 67 with some sort of he'd had some sort of injury that meant that he could only really do like half a rowing stroke, but he'd been rowing all of his life in the boat. He only finished like 6 or 7 days after him. He finished in about 42, 45 days or so. The other guy finished in like just about the 50s. But to say that he was doing half strokes and was nearly in his 70s just goes to show like how his experience of knowing how to maneuver the boat and how to work with the tides and the winds helped him so much more than just brute force. So that's going to be the priority, is getting on the water.
Yeah. I think you're going to have to think of it a lot like Ross Edgley thought about with Swim Round Britain, where everyone's like, you don't have the body type for that, like you're not a swimmer. He's just like this massive tank of a man, and he's like, oh no, but you need the resilience. Like, you're going to be out there for 70 days. You need it so your body doesn't break, both from that physical perspective, but also from like nutritionally, illness, as you've mentioned. Like, you can't afford to get ill out there. Like, you need to make sure your body's in the best physical form to do it, and then making sure that you haven't got, like you're saying with the rowing machine, like have a bit of muscle memory, but the ocean reacts differently to a rowing machine. Like you need the most efficient biomechanics for the situation you're in. It might not be the most efficient compared to like rowing on a machine or in a like pool or on a lake. It'll be completely different. So like you're saying, yeah, just get out and get going and learn that by doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Like the rowing machine in the gym stays still for one, right? And you've got like the boat is going to be rocking from side to side constantly. Your oars, you have to get them in the water at the right kind of angle to be efficient in your stroke, and then stroke length makes a big difference as well. Whereas on that Concept 2 machine, you just rip it. You think you're doing a great job, and it doesn't really matter where your arms are going high or low or anything like that. The meters just keep piling up. So, I'm sure some of it's transferable, right? Like a lot of the motion is still going to be, pushing from your legs, pulling from the top and then legs again.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a completely different beast when it's something for such a long period of time. Like you say, you've got to have that resilience and you've got to be well prepared beforehand. And that means like all the simplest things, right? Get to the dentist beforehand. If you need a filling, get it before you go. You don't want to be out there with a toothache. Something as simple as that can you imagine how horrible it would be if you cracked a tooth or needed something out in the middle of the ocean? That would be one of the smallest things that you'd be like, do I have to cancel this whole thing that I planned because of my tooth? That would just be the most frustrating and annoying thing. So yeah, we've absolutely got to give ourselves like the full MOT beforehand, get down the doctors, make sure everything's okay, make sure we're not going to get appendicitis, no teeth are going to come falling out or anything minor like that. If you get ill or some fungal infection or something from the wet, there's not much you can do about that, but hopefully we can ride it all out. If you get injured, again, like it's a difficult thing to kind of gauge, right? And we'll have to gauge it with each other. Have you sprained your hamstring from just overuse and you need to just take a bit of time out? We both just need to ride it for a while? Or did you dislocate your shoulder and we need to call it? So those things, I guess, there's only so much preparing for that you can do, right? If the boat gets capsized and one of us gets injured, so be it. That's luck of the draw, right? But the things that we can prepare for, we've obviously, we've got to make sure that they're covered.
Yeah. What do you see happening after all of this is over? Like, what's afterwards for you? Have you thought that far ahead?
Yeah. Absolutely not. I think this takes out so much of my mental capacity, and I'm so focused on it that this is the only thing in sight right now. I am kind of blinkered and I'm focused on that end goal. I really do want to enjoy the journey, right? Because it's really easy to focus on this. I want to get there and I want to do it, right? And I'm coming here today to try to promote it so that I can have something to talk about and share with people about getting the fundraising and all of these different things. And it's easy to think about how I'm going to do this and what am I going to do tomorrow, what am I going to do the next day, and try to execute. But I really do want to make love to the process throughout and come out on the other side having really, tried to take it all in, meeting the people that I'm going to meet, having the ups, the downs, the struggles that get us to the start line, and then also enjoying the row itself. Again, its highlights and its lowlights. It takes me always to an Alan Watts quote, which is where a lot of people will talk about life as a journey, and what we're doing is actually just a journey from one place to another. But if you think about whatever it is you're doing as a journey, the aim in that journey is to get from point A to point B, and you're successful when you reach point B. If you change that viewpoint slightly and you think of life or the things that you're doing as a dance, the point in the dance is never to get to the end. The point is the turns and just enjoying the motion back and forth of the dance itself. You don't want the dance to end. Like, the point is doing it. And so that's why, I want to make sure that I'm present and enjoying the dance of preparing, getting excited, feeling stressed and nervous and anxious that are we going to make it happen, doing it, feeling the pain of doing it, feeling the relief afterwards. I really want to make sure I'm present throughout the whole process, and I'm not just focused on how do I get to the end as quickly as possible.
Yeah. If there was one question that you wish you was asked in this podcast that I haven't asked so far, what would it be and what's the answer?
That's deep. I might have to have a couple of seconds to think about that one. If there was a question that... Yeah, I think I've said most of what I feel I wanted to talk about. I think that I've talked about a lot of stuff. And in terms of like the context of the podcast, mate, I think that's pretty much the stuff that I wanted to talk about. I can't think of anything, no.
Amazing. Well, taking it to the question I finish every podcast on, if you could give... I've been using the context of the listeners, but I think it's more personal if I ask the context of you. If you could go back in time and give 18-year-old self you some advice, what would it be?
Oh shit, I was talking about this one the other day as well, actually. Oh man, what would the advice be? It's tough, right? I was having a conversation the other day where I was sort of saying, I've gotten to this point in my life where I've realised I've maybe not as fulfilled as I want because I'm chasing financial goals, and I want to actually chase things that I would consider to be achievements and things that I think feed who I am. There's a part of you that in my mind goes like, okay, well, if I could go back to 18-year-old me, would I change my life entirely and say don't go into sales? And at this point, maybe that's something I would say to myself is like, don't do that. Stick to the fitness career and do some outdoor stuff. But you get to that point of like, well, what if going through that journey is what leads me to do something that I never thought I'd do, which is like row an ocean? And if that's the case, then I don't want to give that piece of advice, but I don't have the hindsight from trying to row the ocean yet because I'm not there. So right now it's difficult because I'm really excited about that journey, so maybe I wouldn't want to turn myself too far off course. I think if I was to give myself some advice, it would be not to get too caught up in chasing financial and material goals. I don't think I would understand, and this is what I'm kind of questioning whether to add this part, because there's a context to it where if I was trying to give myself some of the advice, there's a certain amount where I know what I'm like and I wouldn't necessarily listen because there's a certain... If you'd never eaten chocolate before and I explained to you how it tasted, it would never compare to you just eating it. and just being explained to how it tasted wouldn't suffice for me either. So I also know that if I turn around to my 18-year-old self and say, hey, don't chase my financial material possessions so much, like, you won't find fulfillment, I'd probably be like, fuck off. I'll find that out for myself, thank you. And I'd be sitting here in this position going, yeah, I should have listened to that guy. He really had some good wisdom. But yeah, I suppose the extra bit that I was going to add on there was like, I actually was paying for a coach. And the coach at the time was, I've got my job. I do well at it. I think I work for a great company. I work in a good team, good people around me. I couldn't ask for more. But, in today's world, you kind of think like, well, what kind of side hustle could I create? I should be doing more than just my job, right? Shouldn't I? And, I was constantly going to him with, one time it'd be this business, then it'd be this business, then it'd be this business. And we were trying to find out like, well, what's the business that you really want to create? And this is where we scratch beneath the surface of like creating this a business. I was like, okay, well, how much money do you want to make then? I say, I want to make this much money. Well, what are you going to do with that money? Well, I'd pay and do these things. And it was like, I would pay to climb this mountain, or I would pay to row this ocean. And he was like, can you just do them without the business? And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe. And it just seems like what I was trying to do there was, I saw the things that I wanted to achieve financially first, as if I had to achieve a financial goal to then go and do the things that I wanted to do. So that's where it comes from. And I think that there are people who really care about and are passionate about the business that they want to start. And I don't have the arrogance to think that I'll beat them at creating a business if I don't care about it and I'm not going to put in the time and the hours. Like, I want something to work without working hard for it, so that I can get the money to then use for these activities and adventures that I want to do. And I think that's a losing strategy. So we kind of got to the bottom of, you need to stop going this convoluted route and just go straight to pursuing the things that you want to do. And again, like, that's where I get this fire in my stomach, because I want to talk about them. I want to train for them. I'm quite happy to go extra hours to try to fundraise for them, because I'm excited by it. If I get one bit closer to doing it, I'm like, yes, that's amazing. But to get one bit closer and to do another 3 hours to set up a business that I don't care about, to then some point down the line hopefully do the things that I want, that doesn't excite me. So maybe I'd give myself that bit of advice and add that context, but I don't know if I'd understand it at the time, and I probably wouldn't listen to myself.
Yeah. I think with advice, it's very important to realise that not only do you have to be aware of the person the advice is coming from, because I've had a lot of bad advice given to me, not from a bad place, like they're trying to genuinely give me good advice, but if it's coming from someone that I don't admire, then it's lost. Because if I'm not admiring what you do, why would I then want to be like you? Because that's all advice is it's trying to get them to go along on that path, because you're seeing it from that person's perspective, and it's like, I don't want to be like you, so that advice is irrelevant to me. I'm going to do this thing. But it's also being aware of the timing that the advice is given, because some of that advice I might have taken now that I wouldn't have taken 10 years ago.
Definitely, yeah.
And it's just being aware, not just as someone taking the advice, but giving advice, is trying to understand where that person is in their life, what they want, and whether your advice is going to be taken well from them, and if it's worth giving. Because I've had to stop myself giving advice, because where I'm so passionate about coaching, for example, and I've lived this life and I've been on these adventures, and I want to give this advice to the kids, because I'm like, I can see the route you're going down, and I know where it goes because I've been there. I've seen these things. I've travelled. I've I've been homeless, I've done these challenges, I've grown as a person, and I want to help you. But at the same time, you don't want my help in this thing. Like, you want my coaching and you want my support in that. My life is irrelevant to where you want to go with your life. Like, you don't want to have the same life as me. You want your own things. And I think it's hard for me to sometimes not give that advice because I'm seeing it, and they talk to me, they trust me, and they tell me about their outside lives. So then I know, like, the details of what's going on, but then they also don't see the details of my inside life. And they're like, they don't know how, like, I don't know how it'd be taken from them. Sometimes it might be positive, other times it might be negative. It could ruin the relationship that I've built with them. Like, you never know. But as a coach and as a person that cares for the people I coach, like, it's sometimes hard to not give that advice, and I'm learning to give less advice and let people figure things out.
Yeah, man, and definitely you also want to, in my own personal experience, you want to look out for when people are asking for advice or when they just want to tell you things. You know, it's a really difficult thing, and you know, you can definitely get into a situation with that when you're talking, like, the most simple one is talking to your mates about their relationships, right? It's the first thing they might say, oh, you know, this happened with my relationship, and the first thing we try and do is say, well, have you done this? It's like, we're not trying to problem solve, I just wanted to get it off my chest, right? And a lot of the time people might want to tell you stuff and might not be asking for advice, and if you wait out, you'll soon find out when somebody's saying, but what would you suggest, and what would you do in this situation, or what do you think I should do? When you get to that point, you're getting invited in for the advice, and I think then it, you know, you feel more open to give it, right? People are requesting it off of you. They're probably more likely to take it than if you're laying it on them.
Yeah.
That's really right.
So to finish off with and wrap up, how can people support you and the adventures you're doing?
Legend. Okay, cool. Well, the first way is we have a just giving fundraising page. So I'll give you the link to that. If people want to donate, there's no donation too small. It all helps in a massive way. And the company that I work for have a donation matching scheme. So anything that you do give will do twice the amount of good. And just so that you guys know, anything that you donate, we are going to use to buy the kit that we need to do the row. So we will be pretty much just investing it in a boat. When we finish the row, we will sell the boat and the proceeds will go towards charity. And ideally, we're going to raise much more than the value of the boat, and all of that will be going to charities as well. The charities are Fisher House and Diving with the Injured. We think both of those charities really align with us and what we're doing. Mike's obviously military, and both of those charities help injured military personnel. Fisher House put the families up when their loved one is in need of urgent medical care. So, you know, one of the ambassadors I met last week stood on a IED in Afghanistan, had both of his legs and one of his arms unfortunately lost in that accident. So in situations like that, they might not live very local, but the families can come and stay in that house whilst the soldier, the loved one, is getting treated in the hospital, and they can stay there for as long as they like. We think the charity does great work. They're based in Birmingham. And then we've got Diving with the Injured, the injured soldiers who might now be in some ways disabled, they take them scuba diving because, like, these people tend to be quite active in their lives, or previously they were very physically active, and to a certain degree that's taken away. But being in the water is a great leveler, right? You don't need to run in the water, and the feeling of gravity is massively minimized by buoyancy. So it's a way for them to adventure and explore. And ultimately, we're called the adventure antidote, right? We think that seeking your own adventure will help you to find peace mentally and help you to improve yourself physically. So aligning with them, we think, is a really great charity because it helps bring peace to those injured soldiers by getting out and seeking their adventure under the water. So by donating, that massively helps. By following, by sharing, by commenting, all of that stuff helps us build a buzz because we want to get corporate sponsors to support us in buying the boat. So the more followers, the more shares that we have, the more those sponsors can kind of buy into us and buy into our journey as well. So if you can't afford a donation, a share is amazing. And other than that, you know, if you want to reach out, talk to us. If you've got ideas, like, we're always keen for a conversation. And ultimately, you know, get outdoors, seek your own adventure, and, you know, tag us in it. Let us know what you've done.
Amazing. Where can people find you online then?
So we literally just started a website. It's called theadventureantidote.com. We are on Instagram and we are on YouTube. Again, it's The Adventure Antidote. Instagram, all of it's relatively new, right? The Instagram will be sharing more adventure-y based content, short form content, and also be sharing things about the charity. On YouTube, I'm posting a weekly vlog on the updates of what's happened kind of behind the scenes, on how we're doing with fundraising, on what the things we're doing that week are. So if you want to follow the journey, you can. And then on the website, we'll have more information about, okay, well, who sponsored us, what are the challenges that we're doing, who are we, where's the money going. So there's kind of, depending on what kind of information you want to find, those are the 3 channels you can find different things across them.
Amazing. Well, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, good luck. Good luck with all your adventures.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Spotify and YouTube and share our content around. It helps more than you can ever imagine. Now, if there's a person in particular that you want to hear from or a topic that you want us to cover, just drop us a message, let us know in our DMs, and we'll make sure we try and reach out to the relevant people to cover that topic for you. We're always trying to make content that you guys want to listen to. We have just dropped our website. It's adventureathletes.co.uk, and you can go on there to find out the range of different services we offer. So we have sports massage, different training programs, and personal training, both online and in person, that you can sign up to on the website. So make sure you go and check us out at adventureathletes.co.uk.